Bad Life Podcast! You're listening to the Bad Life Podcast, your number one guide on how to run a profitable band. Here are your hosts, Pete Stannard and Adam West, the Wizard of Rock!
Wizard of Rock is eating his music.
Hello, and welcome to the Band Life Podcast. I'm your host, Pete Stannard, and I'm here with the Wizard of Rock himself, Mr. Adam West. Hey.
I feel
I'll let that run out. Welcome, sir. How are you on this fine day?
Very good, sir. Very good.
Very good. Once you get your breakfast down your throat.
Yeah. Apologies to the viewers for any sort of food residue that lingers on the beard there, and the slurping and the eating. But my cat demanded my attention this morning. So
I'm not going to make any pussy jokes. Okay.
I don't think you should, Pete.
I don't think this is a fun family show.
That's right. Yes.
Obviously.
You make sure you remember that.
I will remember that. I tend to forget that.
Yeah.
My potty mouth comes out. But anyway, Adam, we're at episode 19.
No way.
And in this episode, we're going to talk about or discuss music releases. How should artists release their music? And how to release it effectively in 2025, because this could all change at some point. The way that music distribution is at the moment. In this episode, anyway, we're going to, just as an overview, we're going to talk about a music release mindset, which is actually quite important. So things like where music is distributed, where fan bases are, and that sort of thing. And then we'll go on to goals, how to set goals, what goals are when it comes to releasing music. Then we're going to talk about Adam's slap. He's finally getting his moment in the sun.
Yeah, you gave it away to somebody else, didn't you?
I gave it. Well, it's one of our lovely guests, Georgia. So yeah, we had to give her priority, mate. I'm sorry about that. He's obviously still very bitter about this.
Dude, I'm the Wizard of Rock. Hey.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, she was our guest, and you like to make guests feel, welcome. But anyway, then we're going to talk about physical releases, and then we're going to talk about streaming releases, okay? To start off, music release mindset, okay? So you kind of have to think along the lines of distribution. I don't want to go into the history of distribution because, believe it or not, we're going to cover that in the next episode, in episode 20. We're going to talk about, is the digital era destroying the music industry? Oh, that's going to be a hot topic, I think, that one.
Can I answer that straight away?
Well, there's many pros and there's many cons, and I suppose we will just kind of tot those up and see what we come up with, sort of thing. But we are in a new era of music release because of the digital realm. It's enabled music artists to distribute globally. And back in the day, before digital, before the internet, only really big, established, almost legacy-sized bands could distribute globally. So it's very much a minority within the industry that could do that. There's that to consider, but also you got to consider from a mindset perspective is where's your fan base, your potential fan base listening to your music at the end of the day.
I don't have a fan base, Pete.
But you can kind of look at it from the perspective of, if you're pop, then Spotify. If you're rock and metal like we are, then Bandcamp might be a better place. If you're into hip hop and that sort of thing, SoundCloud is more of a home. So these platforms, they have a genre slant, I suppose, or a bias in a way. And it's just something to think about as a music artist, where you want to kind of point people, that kind of thing. That's the kind of mindset thing that you need to have, I think, broadly speaking. I'm not going to drill down too much into it because we will be here for hours talking about, the advantages of being on Bandcamp as opposed to SoundCloud and that sort of thing. I would suggest to our listener, go and do a little bit of research and find out, what genre you're into. I mean, and think about yourself. I mean, where do you generally listen to music? I mean, you're a fan of the genre that you're making music in. If you're not, then why are you doing it?
Well, you touched a bit on it on one of the episodes we did anyway, didn't you?
Yeah, we've talked about this sort of stuff before in previous episodes. There's a sprinkling there. I think the next episode will probably dig into that a lot more. So that's that's not really what this episode is about. So I don't want to go too heavily into it, but it's something to really think about when releasing music from a mindset perspective, certainly around marketing and when, where your audience is at the end of the day. Moving on from the mindset thing, I think an artist's need to think is to have a goal for where they're releasing their music. Because different platforms and distribution networks will yield different results. I always say, broadly speaking, there's 3 goals. These can be put into 3 different buckets as such. I'd put it into one of these 3, either building a fan base, generating a revenue, or industry interest. Because certainly when it comes to streaming, different platforms are going to yield different results. For example, Spotify is a really good place to build a fan base from. But if you want to generate a revenue, it's pretty rubbish, to say the least.
I could think of another word to use, but there you go.
I can, but like I say, this is a family show, Adam. When you released your last album, or your first album, Did you have any goals in mind that you were kind of like, okay, I want to generate a revenue, I want to, build a fan base, or was it just purely, I just want to get stuff out into the world and kind of draw a line under the songs that I've got, sort of thing?
Well, 2 things really. Generate a revenue at some point later on down the line. But the other one was to get the music out there, really. The thing is, I came into it, well, me and you were talking about all this stuff, and I'd already set the wheels in motion at that point, really. I just had to get the album out there. The revenue, I knew I wasn't going to get any kind of revenue from Spotify, so I was like, I'll get the physical copies of the album done, and then based on what I pay for them and what I could charge, I would make my money back if I sold a good chunk of them. So
yeah,
I knew that I would sell a couple on Bandcamp, digitally or physically. I thought, based on what some of the HMV stores were saying, we took the physical copies there and we sold quite a few there. So that now for us has been the basis to work from. So we can go, right, got some albums left. We'll take them to the HMV stores and we'll sell them off premises, of course.
Of course.
Yes, of course. And we'll, based on the success last time, we're going to do that again. And what we got left, hopefully we should sell a bit
more. Through, yeah. That's great.
If you're enjoying this podcast and you're a generous soul, which I'm sure you are, why not buy Adam and myself a cup of coffee? You could do that at buymeacoffee.com/The Band Life Podcast.
Let's move on. We're going to move on to Adam Slap. Adam, my friend, I've been really looking forward to this.
Cool. And I've got it segues nicely
This
into
does into your slap.
my
Okay,
slap. Let's do it then. Give us a slap.
go on then.
Go do the sound effect. You got to do the sound effect first.
No, it's if we decide these. If I decide these people deserve a slap, you need to make the case, mate.
Oh,
This is
okay.
how it works. You see.
Right.
So
Okay.
you make the case,
I'll
and
make
then
the case.
and hopefully the listeners will agree, and then you get the slaps. If we disagree, I don't know. We'll just go nah. I haven't thought about that. What if we disagree? We'll
Oh, you
see.
want to play like
I need
that?
to I'll get a duck noise or something. Go quack.
Yeah. Get that Minecraft sound that they make.
I'd be a bit more old school and be like lemmings. Be like, oh no. Anyway, Adam slap.
Here we go.
Who are we slapping, my friend?
Okay, I would like to slap all venues and promoters who don't get back to you when you're trying to book a gig. And when they do get back to you, it's usually a week before the gig. And then it's too late because some of us have to book it off in work. And it really does my absolute nut in because I've been at this, battling it for bloody ages. And
Decades.
And it's the same old story. It's like, yeah, we can sort that out. But it's a little bit later in the year, so leave it with us. And it's like they're not going to remember this. So yeah, I want to slap. I want to slap twice. All venues and promoters who don't get back to you because it's a nightmare.
It is a nightmare. And you know what? I completely agree with you, sir. Those who never get back to you in general deserve this. Ah! Just have some kind of humility and get back to people. It's not difficult. So, well done, mister. You get... Yeah!
Thank you, Judge Dredd.
Thank you. That's enough of that.
Pete is Judge Dredd, judge and jury.
Judge. Well, if we have a guest, we both get to do it. Well, you get to judge me when I do a slap. So next episode, I'll do a slap, and you can
I've got
judge.
a button of eye like you. It's not fair.
Oh, that's all right. I'll edit it in. I'm going to want to talk about physical release. I think this is something that certainly new artists and young artists seem to think is irrelevant in some way. I completely disagree with them on that one, but I will make my case with this. And I'm going to give you some practical advice, dear listener, as well, which will be really helpful. So stick around for the practical stuff because I'm going to give you some practical advice about streaming as well. But we're saving streaming for the end. But anyway, a physical release. So just in case you don't know what a physical release is. So a physical...
I don't know what it is.
You don't know what it is?
What is it?
Or as we say in the industry, Adam, mechanical copies. So your physical copies or your mechanical copies are things like vinyl, CD, cassette, the age-old mini disc. Do you remember those?
Yeah, my dad was a massive fan of mini discs.
Mini disc. I've got an old CD player that I use in my little office at home. It has a little mini disc slot on it. The advantage, there's two main advantages to releasing physical copies. Okay, you give your fan base something tangible. You know, as a vinyl head in particular, as I know you are, sir. You do create a deeper connection because they've got something that they
tangible
can hold on to and look at and sit down. Even the quality of vinyl is better than MP3. You get a richer, warmer sound from physical products than you will from streaming. Okay, because you're taking the digital element out of it. Plus, you will generate more money. So from that goals, going back to the goals section that we were talking about, you will generate, or you should hopefully generate more money than you would relying on streaming royalties, because you would sell them at a markup. You're not going to sell them at a loss because that would be silly. Well, but back in the day, what you would have is the industry would call them breakables. So these are the ones that, firstly, they would say, oh, well, a certain amount are going to get broken in transit, but also a certain amount would just be given away to things like radio stations, to whoever in the industry. And they would be considered breakables. And there would actually be budgets within record deals that say X amount is for breakables. And the cheeky thing is, I don't know if it's so much anymore, but certainly a few years ago, there were record deals still going out that had breakables. So bands were being charged for breakables, even though they weren't distributing physical. So
that doesn't surprise me. Everyone's trying to shaft everyone these days.
Yeah, because there's just these little things that record labels and record companies would put into their deals that would come over from that were just historical things. But they were like, let's just leave that in, see if we can make a little bit more money from that. Yeah. And it's not until people have this sort of knowledge that they kind of go, oh, hang on. Why are you charging me for this? Going back to our topic of physical releasing, there are some downsides to physically releasing, as Adam will have an opinion on, I'm sure. But the downsides are obviously costs of duplication, the artwork, the print, e-commerce costs and things like that. Because if you're selling it digitally, I know how much Adam loves the word e-commerce, so I try to get it in as much as possible. Additionally, there's a risk of not selling them. So you've forked out X amount of money, and if you don't sell them through, then you're left with them in cupboards and under beds, which also has a psychological component as well, I think, because if you do see them, it's just a constant reminder that you just can't sell your music. That doesn't necessarily make your music bad as a caveat to that. It just means that you haven't been able to sell it. Not selling something doesn't make the product bad.
That's right, it doesn't.
You know, it just means that not enough people know that that product exists half the time. Then, you know, so there is a caveat to that. But sometimes, you know, to be brutally honest, sometimes maybe your music's just not good enough. You know, I'd hate to say it, but not everyone is going to be good.
I don't want to name drop, but I will. Metallica's 72 Seasons is just like that.
Oh, okay. What you think that the production's really good, but the songwriting's
I think they're both awful. I really do.
Both of them. Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay. While we're on this kind of realistic, the realms of reality, is that the reality of selling physical means that you have to have a fan base. Only fans are going to buy your physical products. You know, if someone doesn't like you, they're not going to buy your stuff. It's as simple as that. Am I going to release physical or not? Then I think there's three main questions that you need to ask yourself. First one is, do we have a fan base? Second one, how big is our fan base? And the third one is, where are the best touch points to communicate to our fan base? Because you need to tell people that you're selling stuff. If no one knows you're selling anything, you can't sell it to them.
I think no, it's true. I think the shorts on like YouTube and Instagram is perfect for stuff like that.
The first thing to say is, do we have a fan base? Just be honest with yourself, okay? And if the simple answer to that is no, then I would probably say don't release physical. Or if you really, really want to, because it is nice to have, and it is a great way to build a fan base, I would do it as cheap as possible so that it doesn't make so much of a dent. And it's not the end of the world if you've got, you know, CDs floating around at home, that sort of thing. Because you're not sitting there going, oh, I've spent $2,000 duplicating all this stuff and getting all the artwork done and everything else, and I've sold 3 CDs. Yeah, I've made 15 quid or something. Here's how I would do it. This practical advice, Pete's tip. Okay. if you don't have a fan base, but you want to try and sell CDs, okay, what I would do, firstly, I would buy a spool of writable CDs. Now, for those who don't know what writable CDs are, they are CDs. They come in like a little plastic case, and you can burn songs onto them. So you can duplicate your EP or your album directly onto these. But you'd also need to buy some, as cheap as possible, CD cases and some blank CD inserts. So the inserts go into the cases along with the CDs themselves. Make sure you match the amount of CDs with the cases and the inserts. Now, I did a little bit of digging onto how much it would cost to produce 50. Okay, now you don't have to produce 50. It's however many you can handle for this process. But I'm using 50 just as an example. So I found you could buy 50 CDs, £18, 50 cases, £15, 50 inserts. So these are just blank cards, inserts, for £16. Now that, as a total, is £49. And what you can do is just burn off 50 CDs if you want. If you do put nothing else into it, it's cost you 50 quid, which in the grand scheme of of music duplication isn't a huge amount of money, is it, at the end of the day? And you've got 50 copies to either give away or sell.
It's not a bad idea. But just looking at that now, I mean, if you weren't particularly fussed on it being as jazzy as, say, my album was, then it's a great cheap way. That's not half of a.
So that's what I would do as first, right? And then step 2, so the first one is to just buy all of the materials you need. Step 2 is obviously burn off those CDs. So you need to get a CD burner of some sort, maybe an old laptop that still has a CD drive on it. Ask your mum and dad. They've probably got one floating around somewhere. I know I certainly have.
I got one from the PC. I want to try to get to work with my computer that doesn't have a drive, but I don't know how to do it.
Oh, okay. You burn all those off. And then step 3 is you go to the pub or to someone's house or whatever, it doesn't matter what, and you make a night of it, have a few drinks, and just have a bit of fun with the next step, which is step 4. Divide all of these CDs, the cases, and the inserts out between you as a band. So if you're in a 4-piece band, you're going to get around about 12 each, there or thereabouts. Then each band member either writes, or if they've got the ability to print onto there, on one side, the track listing, so the name of the songs. But you make sure that there's enough room on that side of the insert just to sign it. But only you are going to sign it. So each batch is only signed by that individual band member. Then on the other side, what you're going to do is you're going to get creative. You're going to draw on there. You're going to stick glitter. You can do whatever you want to do. It's completely your own thing. You make it your own, but what you can do is do things like drinking games and stuff like that. First one to, or the last one that does the first 5, has to down a pint or whatever, that sort of thing. Why we're doing that will come later on in this. You're going to get really creative on the front, generally the front side of that insert. But while you're doing that, have someone there filming the whole process of you making those inserts. What you're going to do is you're going to make a long form video for YouTube specifically, and then you're going to repurpose that long form into short form, and then you're going to use that to advertise these CDs once they're made.
Genius, mate. Genius.
Yeah. So once you've completed making up your inserts, as you go, put in the CD and you put the insert into the case.
So each one's unique, right?
Each one is completely unique to not just to the band, but to that individual musician. So the advantages to this, with people going, why would you do that? Well, the advantage is, firstly, this, if you include all your materials and your drinks and stuff for the night out, it's going to cost you probably around about £100 in all. Everyone in the band puts, if you're a 4-piece band, puts 25 quid in, right? There's that. So it's very, 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 very cheap. You're getting some great content and some great marketing to help you expose your band and the CDs that you're trying to sell. Plus, you're selling something very unique that's to the band and to the individual band members. Another one that I didn't put on here is that a night out with your band will bring you closer together as a band as well.
Indeed.
So you're bonding as a band of brothers and sisters, that sort of thing. But also, as a selling point, if you blow up as a band, these CDs will be worth huge amounts of money in the future. This is why people will buy it. This is why fans will buy it. Because if they think that you're going to go somewhere, they're going to be like, well, if I've got this CD, this is actually going to be worth a lot of money. And it's a really good example because they're so unique. Could you imagine if the Beatles or David Bowie did this back in the day? How much would a John Lennon or a David Bowie CD like this be worth now?
That's why we sign all ours at the HMVs. And they're all differently done as well.
Exactly. I mean, they would probably be worth millions because not only have you got the actual music, you've got a handmade insert in there as well. I mean, there's from that perspective, from these diehard fans, they will be all over this as a concept. I think that's a really good way of doing it. It doesn't cost you a huge amount of money, which is the main thing, I think. So even if it doesn't pan out the way you want, it's not like you're sitting there going, oh, I've spent thousands of pounds on something that hasn't panned out very well. But if it does pan out very well, you've got fans for life. You've got a fan. You've got
I like
a number
this.
of fans that will be sitting there going, do you know what? Every time that band is mentioned, someone's going to sit there and go, do you know what? At home, I've got a CD of such and such an artist. When they were first starting out, they brought out these CDs that they handmade themselves, and I've got that at home, and it's worth X amount. It's probably worth hundreds of thousands, if not millions, if they're that big. So
Interesting.
I think that's genius. That's what I would do.
You should
myself.
patent this idea.
I'm not sure you can. That's the thing. But no, I'm a generous soul, and I'm happy to share this stuff with our listener. Moving on to the next question is, how big is your fan base? Why is it important? Yeah, exactly. One troll. Why is it important to know the size of your fan base? Well, the obvious one is like how much physical are you actually going to produce? And a really good way of deciding that is, well, how big is your fan base? Only fans are going to buy it. So if you've got 100 fans, maybe producing around 50 to 100 physical copies of it would be a good idea. That sort of thing. So you're not going, I've got a fan base of 100, I'm going to produce 10,000. That would be silly at the end of the day. I always say, and if you've listened to this podcast before, you've probably heard me mention that I think your fan base is only as big as your email list.
Yeah, the email, yes.
The email list, I know. It's a bone of contention for most because...
No, it's good. I've kind of give it a go a little bit as well. This end, Bandcamp do something similar, don't they? You've got the community aspect there. Yeah, email. If you subscribe to or follow, you can receive email notifications, and then if you go on the app, you put a post on, they'll get an email.
Yeah.
Was that okay? Does that work just as well, or do you want?
Yeah, I'd say that's similar because people are giving you their email, so they want to hear from you, and that's the distinction between an email list and your following on social media, for example, is that people on social media don't necessarily want to hear from you. It's kind of a scattergun approach of, oh, look at me sort of thing. Whereas an email list, those people are asking you, or they expect you to email them. I mean, I wouldn't email them like every minute of every day.
That's where I'm going wrong, man.
Yeah, some email marketers would say, well, you should be emailing people at least once, maybe twice, maybe even 3 times a week, that sort of thing, depending on what your product and services are, I suppose. But there's that. So the fundamental part of having an email is, this is why I say it's a good barometer of what your fan base is like, is because those people want to hear from you, and that's how you know they're fans.
Good tip. I'll go for that.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Yeah. But you can, if you don't have an email list, which I know a lot of artists don't, especially when they're first starting out, you can kind of get a rough estimate, but this is really, really rough, okay, from your follower numbers on things like streaming sites and stuff like that, but your social media followers as well. I would probably say for your social media in particular, I would at least, if you're being really, really generous, halve it. If you're kind of being a bit kind of mean, maybe 10% of your following you could consider
not mean,
to
I'm
be
just
your
tight.
So. Yeah, there is that. If you're being a bit tight, that's kind of where I would look at that and say, so okay, if you've got 100 followers, 10% of 100 is 10. You should be looking around producing 10 physical copies, which has its advantages, because if you're only producing 10 of it, it's not going to cost you a huge amount of money to do it. I mean, I kept it under 100 quid for 50. When it comes to producing physical, it's also knowing what format to do it in. And you can gauge that from the size of your fan base. If you've got a very small fan base, I would stick to CDs. If you've got a medium to a larger fan base, our guest on the last episode, Georgia, she's got a medium to large fan base. So she produces vinyl. And because vinyl's a bit more expensive, it's a bit more difficult to sell. CDs, you could probably sell them, depending on your costs, you could get away with anywhere between 5, 10, maybe £12 at a push, sort of thing. With vinyl, she was saying just to duplicate the vinyl was £18. But then obviously you've got the sleeve itself and any print work on top of that. So I can't remember what her final cost was for selling.
I don't think it was
but I'd
cheap.
imagine it's something around the 25 to 30 quid area, around there.
So Bandcamp do the vinyl pressing. I only found this out after I'd done all my albums, physically, right? And what they do, if a fan wants the album on vinyl, obviously you have to send them how it's going to look, Bandcamp. Yeah. And when that person orders it, they pay for it, not you. So, the production goes ahead and they pay him for the production and the cost and everything else. So, yes, it is a little bit more money. But I was looking into that. I come across it after I'd done my physical albums. And I went, do you know what? If only I'd known that a bit sooner.
Again, it all comes down to the marketing. The argument there, I suppose, playing sort of devil's advocate, is that if you didn't know about it, what's the chances of your fan base knowing about it? That sort of thing. So it all comes down to how you market this stuff and how you tell people and where you point people to consume your music. That leads quite nicely onto the next question. But this is another quick tip to sell physical copies, is to try and bundle them with other merch. If you've got t-shirts and hoodies and stuff that you're trying to sell, say, look, if you buy a t-shirt and a hat, you get a free CD, that sort of thing. As a little side note, as a sales tip, as it were.
Yeah, we've considered doing that as well.
This brings us quite nicely to our next point, which is, where is the best touch points to communicate with your fan base? Now, touch points, if you don't know what a touch point is, it's basically where your fans gather. So obviously it's really important to know this in marketing generally. This is why marketing companies do huge amounts of research. Market research is where they'll spend most of their money for marketing companies. As a part of that research, what they'll do is they'll look at where are people consuming on social media. Are they more on Facebook? Are they more on Instagram? Are they more on TikTok? Are they more on YouTube? That sort of thing. Are they going to certain venues? Are they going, if they're putting up billboards, is the Tube in London the best place, or a roundabout in Solihull? I don't know why I picked out Solihull. Just random. Do you know why? I every now and then I get an email from a marketing company saying I should advertise my business on a roundabout in Solihull. That's why that popped into my head.
You should do it, Pete. You should do it.
I'm nowhere near Solihull.
You should just do it anyway.
I should do it just to burn some money.
Go to Solihull.
Go to Solihull
and advertise.
I'll spray paint Greenwave Productions on there. That sort of thing. It's good to know that, because like I've said before, if no one knows you're selling something, you can't sell it. It's as simple as that. Obviously, the best touch point, as I said before, is your email list. Okay.
Email list. Got it.
Your email list.
Check.
If you're selling something, send out an email saying, I'm selling CDs. Yeah, be up. It doesn't have to be a massive, or massively complex, I'm going to use the psychology of sales or anything. You can just be upfront and honest. Say, look, I've got a load of CDs I'm trying to sell. You want to help an artist out? Buy one here.
Well, I did that on Bandcamp. I
tenner.
put a post out saying physical copies of our albums still available. I'll bung in a few cool stickers like that one there.
That one. Yeah, as he's shown. Nice.
Hello. And then I literally got an email like 5 minutes after from someone who bought the physical copy of the album. I was like, wow, it works. Thank you, Pete.
That's all right. That's right. Yeah, I think a lot of the time is people tend to just really overthink this stuff. It's like, oh, how am I going to get more followers? Well, just ask people to follow you. Yeah, it's not complicated. If you're not asking people to follow you, why would they?
Isn't it a bit Dean say, I said to him, why don't we just do a video and just say, look, can you please follow and like us?
Yeah.
And that's it.
Nothing wrong with that.
Is it pretentious? A bit pretentious, is it to be?
No. Why? Why is it pretentious?
I don't know. It just makes you sound a bit desperate, don't it?
Well, no. Because
we are desperate, Pete.
Yeah, exactly. Then everybody's desperate. But anyway, I digress. Going back to the touch points. So obviously, email is your best place, your best touch point. But obviously, social media is there. But I would view it more. I wouldn't look at social media from a point of view as you're going to sell directly from that post. Firstly, I would look at what kind of post you would put out to raise awareness around what you're selling. But I would also do another set of posts that is just reminding people on your email list, because generally speaking, if they're on your email list, they're probably following you on social media as well. So what you can do is literally just put out a post saying, if you're a part of my email list, check out your inbox because I've got something special for you. That sort of thing. So you do that obviously before you make the announcement that you're selling stuff online, because the point of an email list and the point of a subscriber base is that you're doing something for them that you wouldn't normally do for people on social media. If you're saying something like, oh, I'm selling CDs, but if you're on my subscriber list, you get a 10% discount or something like that. That's something special for that subscriber base. And the good thing about that also is that hopefully it entices other people to join your subscription list, because if they want to buy something, they get discounts, then it's a good thing for them to be on your subscription list, because then you can market to them with like, oh, purely for my subscribers, that sort of stuff. You're going to get 15% off the vinyl if you subscribe to my mailing list. It's a big thank you for being a fan at the end of the day.
I think
That
you're onto
sort of
something there,
thing.
Pete.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a basic thing. I mean, there's not many subscribing mailing lists that you don't get something from it. When you subscribe to a website, generally you'll get like 20% off your first purchase, that sort of thing. So all you're doing is something. It's a basic e-commerce tactic, but it works and it's enticing people in. And if people want to buy stuff from you, why not give them a little bit of a discount for giving you their email? They're giving you their private data.
Right, there you go. There's my email.
Oh, it's backwards.
I will give you 1% off my album, which is this.
Which is this for the listeners. It's a 6-page digipack.
And I can confirm this.
You
album's
want
amazing.
to email Mr. West. Link is below if you're watching this, but if you're listening, it's linktree/The Shallow Souls, and you can go there and you can contact Adam directly, and you can send him hate emails for being so pretentious.
I will throw in a couple of stickers.
Throw in some stickers, which is additional artwork from the album.
Yeah, you only get these
For listeners.
if you sign up to our email.
Yes.
So come on,
stuff.
Mr. Troll.
Come on, Mr. Sign up, and then you can troll Adam directly. That in itself is just worth
and then we'll
it.
troll Pete.
Yes.
Comment, like.
Yeah. So yeah, like I say, from a social media perspective, direct selling on social media just isn't a thing anymore. Just don't try it. You know, don't even bother to say, I'm going to hold up a T-shirt and say, buy my T-shirt. People are going to swipe away from that. But if you're saying something like, oh, just to my subscribers, go check your inbox because there's 20% off. That's going to be more enticing to a potential fan than you trying to flog your wares in a brazen way. Obviously, as my last point, another great touch point is your live shows. Okay.
Yes.
But as a little side note, not just your live shows, other people's live shows.
Well, you mean you should jump on stage and try flogging the CD on someone else's live show?
Nope. I would not suggest that, Adam. Okay. I would say, going back to, what I mentioned about breakables and giving stuff away.
Yeah.
If you have CDs that you don't mind giving away, then why not? Or even USB sticks are quite good for little cheap USB sticks. Quite good for this. Go to a show. Plus, you get to go to the venues that you want to play in, and especially if you're playing a show like the next week or something like that, hand this stuff out at those shows to people. Just say, "Oh, we're playing in next week. There's a CD. Go and give it a listen. If you like it, come and see us next week." Let's move on to the big one, Adam. Streaming. So when it comes to streaming, I think there's two types of listeners on streaming. You have obviously music fans, but you also have what I call casual listeners. Now, music fans, they will use streaming platforms to discover new music. Okay. Yeah. Whereas casual listeners will just listen to music while they do other things like, cooking or having a workout or whatever. Music is just like a background element to them.
Yeah, that's me. That's why I'm like one of those.
Yeah, and like I say, it doesn't mean there's not a crossover, because obviously you're a music fan, but I mean, I'm a music fan and I still have music on in the background. Music is constantly on in my life. Okay. So if I'm doing something, I'm putting music on.
So if I'm busy on the PC and I'm having a day in the office, I'll put Spotify on. I'll play, say, an album of my choice that I've liked over the years. And I'll put that on. Once it's finished, Spotify recommends something, right? Yeah. Because the track's finished. From that recommendation, right, I've literally tagged and liked 511 songs.
Okay.
Of bands and artists that I otherwise probably wouldn't have listened to. I'll be sat here and I'm like, oh, I like that. Who's singing that? It's a tidy lick or a riff in there.
Yeah.
And woof, yeah, I got like 511 tracks. Just
Yeah,
a
so
side note there. Like.
that confirms my point. Is that because you're a music fan, obviously, but what I would say is, especially if you're starting out, don't look to make money from streaming. Okay, that's probably an old horse that's been beaten a lot. If you don't get that message by now, you've probably been under a rock for a while. Because the royalty rates are so low. So from a goal perspective, don't look at streaming like it's going to generate money. Look at it more from a perspective of it can help me to be discovered. It can help me grow my fan base. Traditionally, the way bands would be discovered, and Adam and I, as old men, will remember this, the way that we would discover music back in the day would be through the radio. So you can take those principles and apply it to streaming. If you look at the way that radio is done, radio stations or DJs would have a playlist, which Spotify and whoever else will have playlists, and they would play the music, and you would tune into that DJ because that DJ would be like rock, or another DJ would be more hip hop or whatever else. And those playlists would be genre specific, and then you would discover new music in that way. The listenership becomes more relevant when it comes to discovering music, and radio listenership is actually still the highest.
Really?
More people listen to radio than streaming sites.
It hasn't died yet.
It hasn't died. It is on decline, though, I will note, but it's not dead.
I done a quick stat right on what is doing well at the moment, because I thought vinyl was taking the lead. It's still CD. I think vinyl's third. I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that, and because the players, if you buy an oldish car, my car is quite old. It's still got a CD player and stuff like that. I still love CDs. I think they're great. I like vinyl as well, but they are a bit of a ball ache to get, because you've got to turn them over and all the rest of it. If I just want to put an album on, generally I'll just reach for a CD. But if I want to just sit down and listen intently to music, I'll put a vinyl on. When it comes to streaming, much like the radio, singles are king. When back in the day when you listened to a radio, they weren't putting albums on, they would put singles out. So it's the same kind of mentality when it comes to releasing music on streaming sites. And the best way of doing that currently, this may change over time, but currently the best way of doing that is a thing called the waterfall strategy or the waterfall method.
Yes, we've talked about this, haven't we?
We have talked about this, but I just want to run it through as a top tip.
Sure. I think it's a very good tip, actually.
Strap in, people. This is going to get a little bit complicated, but it's well worth doing if you get your head around it. What I would do is I would look to release a song every 4 to 6 weeks until the completion of your EP or album. All the songs on your EP or album are released individually. So let's say, for example, you have a 10-song album that you're looking to release. You're going to release a song once a month for the next 10 months.
Pete, is that through Spotify or Bandcamp or what?
No, it's through through your DSPs. So it will go on to Spotify, it will go on to iTunes and Napster and Tidal and wherever else.
So obviously I don't use DistroKid or anything like that anymore. So if I was to do the water, so give you a quick example. We hope to come and do our second album with you.
Yep.
So you would advise us to do the waterfall effect and release a song every 4 to
6 weeks, depending on how you want to do it. But if you're not doing anything streaming, then this is irrelevant. You're not releasing anything onto the DSP, so it's not a part of the streaming world anymore. So Bandcamp, you don't have to go through a DSP, do you? No,
I just wondering if you could release a song I wonder if you could do it the same way in which you could do with Spotify.
You
without
can
the
do.
ball egg.
You can do.
I'm just curious. That's all. Okay.
Yeah,
Right,
so if you've got what would be called an open source platform like SoundCloud or Bandcamp, you can do this in exactly the same way. It's just you'd have to do it individually on each platform. Yes, yeah, you can do, I suppose. But Bandcamp, you don't stream from Bandcamp. It's not a streaming platform, is it? Technically, it's not in the same way that Spotify is.
Well, you can listen to music on there, but after a while, if you want to listen to the track again, they might say, "Sorry, you got to pay now."
You got to download it, sort of thing, or buy it.
Yeah.
So it's a different kind of platform in that way because you can't earn a royalty. They're not going to pay you any royalties on that.
No,
If someone just listens to the song, you're not going to get a royalty from that. So it's slightly different, and it's a fair comment because there's obviously SoundCloud do pay a royalty, but they don't run through the DSPs. So I think you can through you can opt for SoundCloud if you want, but you can also directly upload. If you want to bypass the DSPs, you can upload directly onto SoundCloud. A lot more of this will come to light, I think. But no, that's a really fair point.
Just thought I'd check that in.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Traditionally, what you would do, if you had a 10-song album that you were releasing, what you would do is you'd have like 2 singles, then you would put out the other 8 as an album. There's kind of a problem there with that because your streaming numbers for those first 2 songs you're going to get, but then your streaming numbers are going to be for all 8 of those songs that you put out because you're putting them out all at once. With the waterfall method, what you're doing is you're generating streaming numbers for all 10 songs. What you'd need to do firstly is once you've done your production and you've got your songs, you've got your finished files, what you need to do is then register each of those songs with a performing rights organization. Now, over here in the UK, it's the PRS or the PPL. In the States, it's like BMI and ASCAP, and in parts of Europe, it'll be different. So every country will have their own performing rights organization, but they all work internationally, and they all work using what's called an ISRC, which is the International Standard Recording Code. So that means that all the performing rights organizations can draw their royalties from that code. Quite a simple thing to do. You go onto their website and you register yourself and the song. The performing rights organization will issue the song with an ISRC. And then you use that ISRC when you upload it to your digital service provider. Do not use the ISRC code that the digital service provider wants to give you. That's for people who don't register their songs with a performing rights organization. All songs have to have an ISRC of some sort so they know where to pay royalties to. If you use the DSP's one, the digital service provider one, this method will not work. You have to use a centralized code as opposed to one that's given over time. Get an ISRC code from the performing rights organization. Now, this is where it gets a little bit complicated. Okay, so strap in, people. Okay, he's ready. He's strapped in. What you do is you release your first song in month 1. Then in month 2, you release your second song and the first song again. But you take down the first song that you released from the month previously. And this is why you need that central ISRC code, because when you re-release that first song, if you don't have that code, your DSP will give you a different code.
Interesting.
When you get a different code, all the streaming numbers that you got from that first month, if you get a different code, they'll be forgotten about. They'll be gone because it's running under a different code. Whereas if you've got that centralized code, all that data from that first release in month 1 will be carried over to month 2. Are you following that? Does that make sense?
Almost. Yeah.
Almost. Okay. Then in month 3, what you're going to do is release your third song, but you're also going to re-release song 2 and song 1 from the 2 previous months, if that makes sense. But then you take down the song 2 that's left up. Okay, so now you're up to 3 songs, but the previous 2 songs, the data has been carried over. So you've got royalty numbers from 2 months worth of streaming numbers from song 1, and you've got 1 month's worth of streaming data from song 2 carried over to month 3.
That way you've got a regular...
You've got a regular amount of streams going through. The data's getting carried forward each month. And then you just rinse and repeat that process for the next number of months. Then when you get to month 10 and you're releasing your 10th song, you're releasing all 10 songs at once, but you're carrying data from 10 months ago. You're carrying that data forward. Does that make sense? You look confused.
My brain is trying to process it. I think this is what I should have done when I had the EP out, and in that way, because you're right with the numbers, you'll see you won't see the same increase of listens. It drops. So if you carry the data over, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you carry it through.
Yeah.
So if you don't have, this is what I'm saying, if you don't have the ISRC code from your performing rights organization, every time you bring a song over, when you re-release the song from the month previously, the DSP will give you a new ISRC code. So you're basically resetting, you're going back to 0.
Yeah, that's what you don't want.
Whereas if you've got that central number, you're carrying that data over because the code carries the data, not the song itself.
Well, that's worth knowing, because I don't think a lot of people would know that. I didn't, so I learned something new today.
You do that until you get to the end of the process, and then you release the album. The advantages to this is, obviously, you're releasing more singles, which is better algorithmically for the streaming sites. They prefer you to be releasing more. If you just release 2 singles and one big block of songs, the algorithm just sees that as 3 releases. If you release 10 songs, they see that as 10 releases. So algorithmically, that works better. You got more opportunity to get onto playlists, so you can pitch to playlists. You have to pitch to play some playlists. You have to pitch before your release date. You've got more opportunity. So if you release a big block of songs, you then can't pitch the songs after it's been released. So you've got more opportunity to get onto playlists from that perspective. The other one, and I think this is a really important one, is the marketing aspect of it, is that you are now marketing every song as opposed to 2 songs and then the album. So it gives you a lot more to talk about throughout the year. You've got 10 months worth of content there, as opposed to, I'm going to release this song on this month and then another song the next month and then the album on month 3. You've gone from 3 months worth of content to 10 months worth of content. Plus, what you can do is for each individual song, with Georgia, for example, she's doing artwork for every song in her album.
Yeah, fair play to her, mind. Busy girl.
Yeah. Then what she can get feedback from her fan base as to what sort of artwork was liked throughout that. And then that can be the basis for the artwork for the physical album, because it's going to be more appealing to her fan base because they're involved in that process.
Interesting.
Also, for things like track listing on the physical album at the end of the 10 months, if you're going to produce a physical, you can say, oh, well, this song I didn't think would be a single is actually really popular, so I'm going to lead with that song on this album. So you're getting a lot of data back on what's going to be a really great way of selling this album in the physical domain. I think from that perspective, it's really good, but you've got to take the mindset of what radio was back in the day and why people were listening to radio, and apply it to the streaming sites. I always say streaming is like a radio station. Treat it like that. Don't treat it like it's going to generate money or it's going to be some big thing. You're going to blow up on Spotify and that sort of thing. The chances of that happening is a Euro Millions ticket type odds, as it were.
Yeah, that's low odds, Peter.
It's very low odds. And, the more you do of this, the more chance you've got of blowing up on Spotify, because in a way, with every single that you put out, you're adding a line to that lottery ticket.
Working a bit smarter, right?
Yeah, you're working smarter, not necessarily harder. If your goal is for growth, for example, then Spotify is a great place for that. You can't, outside of the royalty rates and things like that, because most people consume music on Spotify, that you're going to find an audience there of some sort. So for growth, for fan base growth, Spotify is really good. If your goal is industry recognition, this is something that actually Georgia brought up in the last episode. iTunes was much better because she was looking to chart, and so that she can have stuff in her bio saying, I've got 4 number 1 singles in the country music charts, that sort of thing. And she said that's really helped her to get booking for live shows and things like that, because she's got that industry recognition there. If you're looking for that sort of thing, that iTunes is the best place to go. If your goal is revenue, which is still going to be pretty low. I've lumped Bandcamp in with this but technically they're not a streaming site as such, but SoundCloud, because they use the user-centric model as opposed to the pro rata model, which we've talked about in previous episodes. Plus, these platforms tend to be a bit more community-based, I think, which helps. So again, that's kind of a genre-specific thing. So you also need to think about where your audience are going to be. If you're a hip-hop artist and you're throwing stuff onto what would be a dedicated metal site, you're probably not going to get a huge amount of listeners. You're not. That sort of thing. So it's having that kind of balance of, right, here's my goal, but here's my audience. Does my goal align with my audience? Because if my goal is purely to make money and all of my audience is on Spotify, then you're going to have to adjust your goals. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is at the end of the day. From that perspective, it's quite important to have those, at least those things in mind. I just want to thank all of our listeners for listening so far, and to look out for episode 20, which is going to be our next episode, which should be coming in the next week or so, probably. And the title of that is going to be, is the digital era destroying the music industry? Ooh. So please subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts and follow us on all of our socials. That's not pretentious, Dean. Okay. And I hope everyone has a merry, merry day. Bad Life Podcast!